G'day, g'day, g'day. It's Samantha Long coming to you live from my bedroom in Glenelg. How are we? I hope we're good. I hope we're good today. So, today I am going to show you my other novel that I've been working on, and I've named it Tales of a High School Reject. Keep in mind, it is very, very dramatic and honest, and I will be using different names for people's privacy. And also keep in mind that a lot of this stuff I don't feel anymore. I wrote this 2 years ago. I am reading it out purely for entertainment value because it is quite funny. And sometimes I even laugh at myself for thinking these things. Anyway, let's dive right in. Chapter 1, Becoming a High School Girl. High school, am I right? It was a catastrophe. Let's just say I didn't exactly find my tribe, as my class were a pack of fake, spoiled, mean, bitchy, privileged children. There were a bunch of nice people, but the rest were assholes. They were divided into the most annoying cliques you could possibly imagine. The normies, who thought nothing was better than posting photos of their parties where people did nothing but drink and make TikToks. The misfit group, who believed they were right about everything. The don't even think about it group, who were nice to your face but mean behind your back. The good Christian girls, who happened to be the most scandalous group in the school. And last but not least, the try too hard group. Unfortunately, I went from the misfits to the try-hards to no group at all. Honestly, I was better off on my own. Luckily, I saw their true colours and avoided them at all costs. So yes, this novel is summing up my high school reject story. Yes, I know it's embarrassing to share this with the world, but it may be necessary. Why am I writing this? So I can leave it all behind. Once my words are written, they're released. Well, at least that is what I aim to do. In other words, the more I write, the more I'll forget this tragic nightmare and hopefully inspire others to not give a shit in high school, as it is meaningless. At my school, Year 12 was huge, as we were forced to watch cohorts before us do amazing things. Valentine's Day, Year 12 retreat, formal, graduation, and muck-up day, or whatever they call that. I remember when I first arrived, I thought being a Year 12 was the greatest. Experiencing Year 12 for myself, on the other hand, it was far from that, as was my entire high school experience. I had been released from primary school, where I was basically the victim of torture. I can't remember everything, however, I do remember practically just being tortured daily and nightly. I had just lost all the weight leading up to high school and I looked amazing. I thought that would change my experience and make things easier, but boy was I wrong, and little did I know what I was up for. Chapter 2, A Standard Day at Lutheran Poppycock. My school was a crazy, toxic environment, disguised as the land of Christian children. I mean, chapel 3 times a week, formal uniforms, blazers, long dresses, hats, and the good old planner. Despite the awful people, I thrived in the media department, which happened to get me into my current course at university. A studio, cameras, microphones, Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, Mac computers, and a school TV show. I made my own episode in Year 11, which was one of the most watched episodes in the school. What can I say? It was my episode, so naturally it was popular. However, I'm not sure if it was popular for the right reasons, as I was kind of the school meme. But anyway, a standard day at that school began with a bunch of good little Christians waiting outside the chapel. We were told to be quiet, but no one ever was. Since they thought chapel was the most important thing in the world, anyone caught disrupting God time was given detention immediately. Extremely over the top, if you ask me. So every morning, there I was, sitting, trying my best not to laugh at the jokes. I mean the prayers and the preaching. Each time the school was told to pray, I would keep my head up and stare at the giant cross. I wasn't a Christian, but I wasn't a complete atheist either. I believed if there was a higher power, it was not what they tried to force me to believe it was. Honestly, that school was an excuse to convert the younger generation into Christianity at times, and boy did it not work on me. Others, on the other hand, I'm not so sure. I hope for those who were converted that they decided to believe in God because they wanted to, not because they were forced. Full disclosure, I have nothing against religion as long as their beliefs aren't shoved down my throat. The first lessons were standard, sitting in class waiting for the recess bell. Usually there would be an annoying teacher who breathed down our backs all the time. Most teachers wouldn't let us work in the breakout space until senior school, which sucked. Then again, there were a few times I can recall in the breakout space where my old friends and I mucked around. Someone once threw a computer case off the balcony. I thought it was a real computer, so I screamed so loud that everyone in the building heard me. Naturally, my screams are about as loud as an opera, so every class was disrupted. Never worked in that breakout again, let's just put it at that. But anyway, recess and lunch breaks changed throughout my time at school. In my early years, I sat with the girls. We used to gossip, laugh, joke, and play around the school chasey. Fucking hell. In year 9, I used to hang out with people around the other side of the chapel, where we'd rave on about anime. I was never into anime, so I never understood what they were on about. In year 10, I hung around with the tryhards. We would usually get changed for PE, then quickly eat our recess. I hated hanging around with them after time because I was always sick of being a follower. It's not who I am because I take things on my own, as I am an individual. In years 11 and 12, I found myself hanging around with the boys that I used to call the dorks. We would discuss interesting topics, debate, create sandwich to burger spectrums, and act like idiots. In year 12, it honestly got so bad that I started mostly flying solo as I'd had enough. No one really understood me. Okay, that's some heavy stuff, and that's not entirely true. I did have a couple of good friends that I could migrate to. I was a little overdramatic. But anyway, back to the story. School would end, then I'd walk all the way home or take the bus. If I felt up to it, I walked. If I ever felt tired and had enough of all of it, I'd take the bus. Either way, I got to walk in for the day. However, the walk from school to my house was almost an hour. Sounds like a standard school day, right? Well, I forgot to mention it included a lot of gossiping, whispering, teasing, laughing, and death staring. However, it was all behind my back. How did I know it was happening? Because I knew fake when I saw fake, and everyone at school faked till they made it, out of desperation to fit in. But why did anyone want to fit in there? Chapter 3, Valentine's Day 2019. By far one of the most annoying days of the year, having to watch couples get affectionate, be forced to listen to a chapel service about God's love, and last at least, being put through the torture of not getting roses or singing telegrams every year. Yeah, pause. That was a thing at my school. They sent singing telegrams and roses, and all the popular girls would get like 12 roses, and then people who weren't popular didn't get any roses at all. And some roses weren't even sent out. But anyway, all the popular girls would receive roses from their secret admirers, while I would be left with an empty desk because nobody loved me. Okay, that's not true. That's not true. A few guys did like me, but anyway. Well, a couple of guys did, but I liked the shy type who were entirely unromantic. However, in year 12, there was a guy who was a couple of years younger than me who sent me like 5 roses, but the way I got them was interesting. In my year, everybody was assigned to do a job on the day. I desperately wanted to get involved in singing telegrams, as I am a good singer. However, nobody fought for me to be included in anything, and it pisses me off even writing about this. There was a girl who was sort of my friend. She was a star athlete who could run like the wind and bend like a stripper. She was sweet, but at the same time, very fake. But she seemed to genuinely enjoy my company, as I was nothing like her other friends, naturally. She had gotten into a singing telegram group, and I couldn't join because they said they had the maximum number of people, which was 6. So I accepted it and decided to just go around handing out roses. The day began with all of us sitting in home class. I had arrived dressed in my own sense of style. A red Mickey Mouse t-shirt, red stockings that went down to my ankle, a red bow around my neck, love heart clips, and white Converse shoes. Whereas everyone else was wearing pajamas or in groups with the same outfits. Wanky. This is what it was like for me, always standing out. I felt like this every time I walked through the door to home class. We were sitting, waiting to receive our roses. Surprisingly, I only received 1 rose from Chloe Archer, a sweet girl who sent them to every girlfriend. Sorry, Chloe, I name-dropped you, but that was a very, very sweet thing you did. Love you. And I miss you. I was flattered. However, the roses from the guy in year 10 were nowhere to be seen. With panic, I rushed to the rose bucket only to see there were no roses left. I decided not to let it get to me and just got on with my job. I met the girls I was with in the Suaviter, a Christian room for prayer and year-level assemblies. We noticed that the chocolates and roses were extremely disorganized. With a rush, we reorganized everything and made sure everyone received their gifts. I did not find a message from the guy, however, I did manage to find 5 spare roses and claim them as my own. Turns out, a girl in my year level whose little brothers were friends with him was working the booth that day when the guy purchased the roses for me. I assume that she must have not let his order go through, as she may have thought it was wrong for him to hit on someone 2 years older than him. I never asked her, but somehow I knew. For once, I felt somewhat special on Valentine's Day. That feeling soon faded as the girls and I handed out roses to the classes. I witnessed singing telegrams going on, humiliating younger students in front of their peers, and I wasn't part of it because no one had fought for me to be. Then I saw a telegram group with 8 people in it. My heart sank. I realized that the girl who was in the telegram group never truly gave a damn, as she just wanted to perform with her friends. I always thought Valentine's Day was supposed to be a day about love, but at that moment, hatred filled my heart. As I had no other option, I continued to hang out with her sometimes, as well as my friends in lower years. Recess arrived. I knew what was coming up, the mass singing telegram. Now, this was the funniest part of Valentine's Day. Everyone voted for someone to be publicly humiliated in the middle of the schoolyard. Usually, it's a teacher nobody likes or somebody everybody loves. In 2018, it was a teacher who was almost suffocated to death by sitting on a chair and having 150 Year 12 sing, "I believe in miracles, you sexy thing," ear rape style. For my year, the unlucky person sitting in that chair was a sweet girl. I never had a problem with her because whenever I walked past, she'd acknowledge my existence. Her boyfriend was obviously the one behind her being chosen, and all I could think was, find me a man like that and I'll be happy forever. But because I was just plain old Sammy Long, I would never find a good guy at that school. Well, there weren't many good guys at that school, but... My ex-boyfriend was in the crowd, so I decided to stand next to him as he was a good guy. We ended up screaming, "I want it that way," at the poor innocent girl. She seemed to enjoy it as her boyfriend gave her a lap dance. It was by far the funniest moment of the day. When the day came to an end, I guess I felt it wasn't all bad. However, I did wish I was included more and that I had a boyfriend of my own at the time. I told myself one thing I always did after I felt rejected in school. Don't peak in high school. So yeah, that was Valentine's Day. Yeah, it wasn't all bad now that I look back at it. I mean, at the time, it was all the end of the world. But, you know, when we grow older and we reflect on things, we see it in a different light. You know, things change, people change, and things get better. Anyway, next episode, the first boyfriend. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I'm going to call this guy Bailey, but that's not his name. Okay, the first boyfriend. Unlike Year 12, Year 8 was full of romance. Since I was only 13 at the time, it was all new and exciting to me. I had never been told I was pretty, asked out, or even noticed by guys before. Suddenly, I entered the school, where all the guys suddenly took notice of me. I remember the satisfying feeling of strutting down the halls, and I could feel all these eyes on me for the first time. For once, it wasn't a bad feeling. I felt pretty. Anyway, the first boyfriend I had turned out to be a real sweetheart. His name was Bailey, but everyone called him Bales. Oh, God, this doesn't really work, but anyway. He was tall, blonde, bubbly, positive, and charming. I remember when we first met. I was playing chasey with my girlfriends, and I noticed a peculiar young man standing in front of my locker. Puzzled, I approached him and asked what he thought he was doing. He told me he was hiding from his friends. I laughed and assumed they were playing chasey as well. We introduced ourselves and stared into each other's eyes for a brief moment. He looked me up and down and I did the same. Suddenly, my friend tagged me, spoiling the moment. As I ran after her, I looked back at Bailey and smiled. Bailey and I didn't speak until the night of the school musical. Since we were in Year 8, we weren't allowed to be in the musical, therefore we watched. I was accompanied by a friend that night. I saw Bailey sitting with his dad. During the performance, I discreetly glanced at him a few times. I remember how I felt as he glanced back. My heart was beating like a drum. My hands were covered in sweat and I couldn't keep still. It was as if I had gone mad, as it was the first time I had felt that way, and I loved it. During the interval, I found a way to talk to him. He was with his dad, sitting on a brick bench by the quad. Since his dad walked away, I approached him, and we started talking. My friend wouldn't leave us alone, only making the situation uncomfortable. She was a good friend, but sometimes she didn't know when to back off. Despite her giggling and slight teasing, I managed to get Bailey to add me on Instagram, since that was all I had back then, because I was like 12, pretty much. That night, We stayed up late, talking about random things. When I say late, I mean 11 o'clock, as once upon a time I thought that was having a late night. Man, was I a strange kid. Anyway, our connection grew stronger throughout the week of knowing each other. 1 week, oh my God, this is so cliche. I used to run past him in my cute little PE shorts whilst playing chasey at lunchtime with the girls. He'd stare at me while his mates nudged him with encouragement. As we'd talk by the lockers and cross paths in the hallway, we'd nervously chat about how our days went. Every time our friends would find a way to spy on us, as this was year 8 after all. This went on for about a week, until one day I was approached by his mate, who told me to go up the stairs to meet Bailey, as he wanted to ask me something. Ooh, saucy. Oh God, this is really funny. This is it, I thought. This was the moment I'd be asked out for real. In the blink of an eye, I bolted up the stairs, only to find Bailey, a nervous wreck. His cheeks were bright red. He was shaking slightly. I could tell his hands were drenched in sweat. He smiled uncontrollably, and he started staring directly into my eyes. It was the first time I felt admired, and it was incredible. His friends hid behind the lockers, pretending they weren't watching. I knew they were, but I didn't care. Finally, he asked me, "Do you want to go out?" Without hesitation, I hugged him tight and said yes. His mates released themselves from the shadows and cheered. Ollie and I descended down the stairs, only for me to find my friends waiting for me. I nodded to them as I knew what he was going to ask. She clapped and giggled in excitement for me. The rest of the girls approached and realised what had just happened. Bailey and I sat on a table and talked, only to be interrupted by all of my girls surrounding us singing, "If you love someone." It was slightly humiliating, but sweet at the same time. The bell rang and I said goodbye to him with a kiss on the cheek. The funny thing was, I had a maths test straight after that. Boy, was I lucky to pass. My first moment of being noticed had begun since I entered my class. Everyone was staring, whispering, winking and giggling. The word had spread about our relationship faster than breeding rabbits. I was sitting at my desk while many people shouted, "Bailey! Bailey!" from inside and outside the class. I saw him in the classroom across the hall. He smiled at me whilst getting teased by his mates once again. It may have been somewhat embarrassing, but I liked the attention. But most of all, I liked him. Oh, God. Anyway, our little romance consisted of constant teasing from our friends, awkward lunch dates, exchanging smiles from across the hall, sneaking cheek kisses and cuddling when no one was watching. There was one day I remember. I was sitting in class and was entirely bored, so I emailed him. He replied within seconds. We had a long conversation and eventually he said he loved me. So I wrote back saying I loved him too. He looked at me from his classroom and smiled. I smiled back. It was the first time anyone had ever made me feel so special, and I'm glad it was him. Unfortunately, our romance was short-lived. I wasn't ready for a real relationship, and neither was he. We were young, immature, and awkward at the time. I let him go and was really upset. However, I knew it was for the best. I thought he'd hate me forever, but that was far from the truth. Eventually, we matured and put the drama behind us. He turned out to be one of the sweetest human beings on the planet, and he still is. I loved him then, and I love him now platonically. Then again, I gotta say, he's still quite the catch. Alright, this next chapter is about my Year 12 retreat. So, here we go. Year 12 retreat. Classic one-night getaway trip for the Year 12s every year. Complete with bonding exercises, Christian nonsense, and confrontational moments. It was basically a night where the teachers tried to get everyone in the year to get over the shit from the past and move forward with a hate-free year. The funny thing was, we had an apology session with fake candles where everyone ran around the room and apologised to those they had hurt in the past. That seemed to help us clear the air. But when we went back to school, everyone acted like it never happened. I apologised to my old friends for being overly dramatic, and many people apologised to me for being rude, leaving me out and not standing up for me when they saw I needed help. Which is funny because if they were truly sorry, they would have tried to help me that year, but nobody did. We were placed in dorms for the night. Fortunately, I had the privilege of being in the dorm with girls that I liked. I can't say their names are there. The fateful day in the suaviter was when we chose who we were in our dorms with. The girls did not seem to be keen to dorm with me, which was evident when we arrived. The others decided to stay in a separate room with just the three of them, while I was in the other room with the other two girls. I convinced myself this was because of this one girl that didn't like me, but now that I look back, I wasn't a favourite person of theirs. Maybe it was because I actually had individuality that they could only dream of. But anyway. That night after the apology ceremony, we were allowed free time until midnight. I decided to do some good old social networking by going from group to group asking how they were. I ended up hanging out with the decent normies, who allowed me to lie down with them on top of the hill and stare at the stars. The sky was clear, allowing every star to be seen. I could see the centre of Adelaide in the distance, lit up like a Christmas tree. Suddenly, it came to my mind that I lived in a beautiful place, full of experiences waiting to happen beyond where I was. I talked to the cutest couple in school for a while, as they were kind, decent people. After a while, I switched to another group, and another, until this one girl and I decided we'd talk to guys we never dared to approach. She ended up telling this one guy that she liked him, and I ended up talking to someone as well. However, he was extremely cold and pretty much acted like I was an alien. Absolute douchebag, if you ask me. I was just trying to be nice. But anyway, that's normal. After that awkward situation, I walked alone around the site. The dickhead group were watching television in their dorm. As I walked past, they shouted, "Sammy!" which somewhat made me giggle. I have to admit, sometimes they were kind of nice. It was moments like this that made me question whether they were truly all bad. Maybe they just wanted some attention. I kept walking on my own until I found a quiet spot with a rock maze on the ground. I made my way from beginning to end, watching every step I took. And when I reached the end, I turned to look at my year levels, socialising and having fun down the hill. It was as if I were a spirit watching from above. I felt happy and sad at the same time, watching them without me. In some ways, I thought I was insignificant, as no one had come after me. I thought of the popular kids and how they had a network of loyal followers, and why I couldn't be the same. Later, I decided to go closer to my dorm, as my friends were nowhere to be seen. I stopped in my tracks on a walkway there, where my fellow director was seated. I was crying and he asked me what was wrong. I explained how I felt. I didn't belong at the school and how I couldn't wait to graduate. He agreed with me and blurted out what he was sad about. He explained how he'd been led on by a girl I'd known since reception at Mitcham Primary. His other friends approached and comforted him. I looked out for him for the next half an hour or so to make sure he was all right. Then his friends pretty much told me to go away as they could handle it. So I went back up the stairs to my dorm. I stood on the balcony and stared at the lit-up city once again for a few minutes. I noticed the cute couple were making their way up the stairs. To avoid an awkward situation, I hid myself. I watched them hug for a long time and whispered that they loved each other. Then they kissed with passion, and he descended down the stairs, leaving a flustered young woman gracefully entering her room. I stopped hiding and watched him walk away, thinking to myself, why couldn't I be that lucky? As I really needed their love and support that they had. I needed to overcome everything on my own, and it sucked. Holding in tears, I entered my dorm and never came out till morning. Some moments may have been difficult, but for the first time I didn't feel completely uncomfortable. I felt safe. True colours and deep desires were revealed that night, and I saw them for who they really were. Individuals. Deep down. Just like me. But when dawn came, they were back to normal. Wearing masks and hiding behind walls. It saddened me that they couldn't have the courage to be who they truly were, as they had to do that to fit in. Maybe the way I saw the world was too different for them. I could only hope that when school ended for these people that they would be confident enough to show their true colours. As much as I hate to admit, they were beautiful. So yeah, that was a Year 12 retreat. It was quite an emotional thing because a lot came out and I didn't talk about all the positives. We had these groups during the day where we would just talk about our problems and stuff, and we would give each other warm fuzzies, and everybody pretty much gave me the same warm fuzzy. They all said that I'm confident and that I'm going to do good things. They pretty much all said that, and I'm really grateful that they said that, because even like people who didn't like me still seemed to believe in me in some way, even though they didn't always show it. But yeah. Anyway, next chapter, my peer support partner. Peer support, a program known to help younger students. Since teaching is a career I've considered, I decided the peer support program would look good on my resume. Therefore, I chose to partake in the program. Also, my school was obsessed with forcing their students to do Christian studies, and peer support was the alternative. Naturally, I saw it as the opportunity of a lifetime. Christian studies was the most pointless, ridiculous lesson I had ever witnessed. Year 9 was the worst, as the lunatic teacher basically spent an entire year trying to convince us that humans and dinosaurs lived together for thousands of years, which is Kind of crazy. Anyway, enough about Christian studies. The peer support program was amazing, despite the fact that we were going to be randomly paired up with a co-leader to run a support group. I was always someone who preferred doing things alone, as other people killed my vibe. Desperately, I scanned around the room of students in the program. Most of them were bastards I'd rather not work with. However, a boy named, let's call him Henry. Henry, I was sort of friends with, happened to be there, so I did all I could to make sure we were paired up. Enthusiastically, I sat by him every class. I may have overdone it because he thought I had a crush on him. Well, he never said that, but I knew that's what he thought. I accidentally looked too happy when the teacher announced that we were paired up. Let's just put it at that. Honestly, I was happy because he was the only person I felt comfortable with in there. But I was soon happy for more than one reason. As time moved on, Henry and I treated the class like a bludge, laughing at memes and talking about random stuff. We always happened to get into the private library room where we discussed business. I expected us to just work together, but we also worked together, if you catch my drift. He told me things he had never told another soul and exclaimed that he told me more than he'd ever told his guy friends. The only complication was that his friends happened to be my friends too. Well, at least I thought they were my friends, but anyway. Apparently not, because they started making fun of him for hanging out with me. His best mate knew he had a crush on me. Unlike the others, that one guy wasn't judging him. However, the others laughed, called him names and teased him whenever I approached him. I knew he had a crush on me, but he just wanted to fit in and not get picked on, so we never happened. I can recall a time at the school on Sports Day 2018 when I walked around with a friend and approached Henry. His mate egged me on to ask him out. Of course, I said I wouldn't do it, just to avoid total humiliation. Henry slowly moved away, and out of my surprise, his mate told him off by saying, "Come on, Henry, we all know you like her. You can't help who you like. Just get with her." Henry, being the immature clinical moron he was at the time, ran away. From then on, I gave up. I knew he wasn't worth crying over, so I sighed and walked away with my head held high. This kind of thing happened to me all the time, and I had no tears left. All I knew was in university, guys would chase after me, which they certainly do. Boys like Henry are nothing compared to the men of Flinders University, trust me. I would know. Every once in a while, I wondered what school would have been like if Henry grew a pair and just asked me out. Maybe I would have been happier, or maybe I would have been heartbroken after the ending of high school. Either way, I just don't care anymore. He was simply just another immature boy from high school who no longer has any significance in my life whatsoever. I mean, sometimes I see him on Instagram, but I don't even watch his story. As are most of the boys I mentioned in this novel as well. Like, they're not of any significance to me anymore. I mean, besides a couple of my friends that I used to hang out with who were in the year below, I don't really talk to anybody else. Anyway, the last time I saw Henry was at the reunion. He pretty much found a way to avoid me the entire time because he was an asshole in the end. Even after school ended, he still treated me like I was an outsider who ruined his life by him trying to avoid feelings for me. In the end, he admitted he did when it was too late. He admitted he liked me. I moved on from him because I knew I deserved better. Now I'm in university where the guys don't judge someone based on their social position, but rather their personality and looks too. So yeah, that was just, a bit of a wake-up call. That's when I, talked to my mum and she told me to just wait for guys in university. So I did, because there's no point in developing a relationship with someone in high school unless you know they're going to be there for you, because high school relationships don't usually work out. But anyway, so this chapter I am excited about because these guys were really good friends of mine and I need you to know about them. As all of you know, or may have suspected, I am clearly a weird human. So it's only natural for someone like me to associate with other weird humans. These were my closest friends, Billy and Hamish, who were the most iconic weird duo in the school. Another boy called William, a boy 3 years younger than me, was also part of our group. The funny thing was, William and Billy were best friends despite being 6 years apart. Maybe that was because Billy was 12 years old at heart. Anyway, the four of us used to do the weirdest things. We'd terrorise the normal, pull little pranks, play chasey, talk to teachers and walk around the school as if we owned the grounds. We would protect bullied students from awful popular kids at any cost. I guess you could say we were the bodyguards for the weird. Trust me, those popular kids were fake and we could see straight through them. I guess you could say I wasn't completely alone, as these guys were my main support. The only downside is I couldn't talk to them about the girl problems, as they were pubescent teenage boys. However, I could laugh and carry on with them, which was good enough for me. In year 10 was when we were at the height of our friendship. Billy was in year 12, so we were closer than ever out of savouring each moment with him. We were so close. People thought we were a couple. I even remember when we first met, we were at Born Youth, attending a hangout night. For some reason, we started playing with a hacky sack. I accidentally threw it at him, only to start a hacky sack fight. We threw it back and forth, trying our best to hit each other. At first, it was slightly aggressive, but it turned into a joke. We laughed so hard that we lost it and started throwing the exercise ball instead. One of the leaders laughed and told us it was probably not the best idea to attack each other with that, so we cooled down, sat to the side and introduced ourselves. Since then, we became best friends. Every time we saw each other at school, we would reference the hacky sack and laugh immediately. Each time we went to youth group, we would try to find the hacky sack and recreate the madness once again. And during prayer music, we'd dance like idiots. Those were such good times. Yeah, I'm calling him Billy. That's not his real name. I miss him sometimes because we were really, really good friends and we used to go to youth group together, so we had that bond there. Yeah, I know. I'm not Christian, but I did go to youth group because I am spiritual and that gave me a chance to explore my spirituality. But anyway, I recall being invited to 2 different birthdays of his, both at the beach house, Glenelg. We called our group The Weirdos and created a Facebook group chat with Billy, Hamish, Will, Bailey and I. After going down the water slides, colliding with each other and all coming out at the bottom of the slide, we laughed hysterically, got in a circle, put our hands in and shouted, 1, 2, 3, weirdos! It was one of the most memorable moments of my life, honestly. I actually felt part of something at that moment. In Billy's last week of school, I once wore his jumper and snuck into the year 12 row in the chapel. The head of senior school saw and chose to laugh and ignore the fact that I was breaking a significant rule. They were really strict on seating. Since it was the last week of school, I could sit with him in chapel while he was still there. When Billy graduated, I attended his valedictory service as a choir girl. I only went so that I could watch one of my closest friends at the time leave school for real. As I watched him collect his graduation certificate, I couldn't help but hope I would make it there someday. At the same time, I was incredibly proud of my friend. He truly was one of the greatest people I knew at that school. He didn't care what people thought. He looked after everyone and just wanted us all to be happy. For that, I'll never forget him and the influence he had on my school experience. Love you, Billy. Once he was gone, everything was difficult, leaving the others and I on our own as the weirdo group in school. One of us was soon expelled. I never really knew why. It became just Hamish and I. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, however, we were missing our ringleader, so things got difficult. We managed to pull through just the 2 of us as we hung out, walked around like we owned the place, and looked after younger weirdos. Suddenly, I was the mama bear of the weirdos, as I was in year 12. Hamish was technically the oldest, but he was held back a year, so I guess it was my responsibility to look after everyone, which I did as best I could. Hamish was preoccupied by other things going on, so sometimes I was by myself. I didn't mind that, but it got old at times, as I missed Billy. Sometimes I wished Billy would come back. He did occasionally, but it wasn't the same. The weirdos would always be weirdos, but they were never quite the same again. Ever since school ended, we have stayed in contact and occasionally seen each other, but we will never quite be as close as we were in 2017. So yeah, that brings us to the ending of part 1. I hope you guys are enjoying the story so far. I got a few more chapters here, and I will be releasing probably about 3 parts. So this is part 1. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed my book, and I hope some of you can relate to it and have a bit of a laugh. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. This is Samantha reporting from her Glenelg bedroom. Over and out. Have a good day. and see you later.